Okay, I think we're good to go. Some of you who have preached in the past may remember back when you first started out, and maybe you can relate to the young man who was preaching his first sermon in this particular church. Of course, being a novice, he was very nervous and wanted to make a real good impression. And he chose for his scripture text the very last chapter in the Bible, which says, "Behold, I come quickly." And he wanted to start off with a bang, and so he got up and he said, "Behold, I come quickly." And then he forgot what he was going to say after that. And of course, he was very embarrassed and wasn't sure what to do, but he said, well, to himself, I'll put a little more into it this time, and maybe I'll think of what comes next. So he got back a little bit from the pulpit, and he kind of came forward to the pulpit, and he said, "Behold, I come quickly." But he was a blank again. He just didn't know what to do, and this was his first time, and so he was really embarrassed. And he thought, well, maybe third time's a charm, you know. So he got all the way back as far as the stage would allow, and he really came forward this time, and he said with much vigor, "Behold, I come quickly." But he didn't realize there was a throw rug up there on the stage, and so he tripped over the throw rug, and he pushed the pulpit stand off. He kind of turned a somersault and landed in the lap of a rather large lady on the front seat, knocked her on the floor. And you talk about embarrassed, red-faced, apologetic. He was trying to pick her up and brush her off and tell her how sorry he was. And she said, "That's all right, young fella. You warned me 3 times and I didn't pay any attention to you." Well, some of these green dots are really taking hold and making friends, and that's our topic. I like the story about the green dot that had to glue the tooth back into one of our directors' mouth. So evidently some of the green dots are cementing their relationships pretty good. If you could stand where I am and look over this audience, and you weren't a individual who was new to Sojourners, you would see some in this audience who you've sweated alongside and worked alongside as a Sojourner. Sojourners have a very special Christian fellowship. It's been said that in order to really get to know someone, you need to put your feet under their table. Well, I sojourn with some of you, and I would like to modify that a little bit. When you get tired together, you pray together, you sing together while doing a sojourn, you develop a Christian relationship that's on an entirely different level. We've sung the words to the song, "When I get to the last mile of the way, I will rest at the close of the day." Every year, we lose some of those that we've been working with on sojourns. This year, we lost someone who had been a team leader on the group that I was with on the sojourn. Won't it be wonderful someday to renew friendships that we are now creating as we work together? We can then rest together when we've gone the last mile of the way and when we've remained faithful until the end. So we're creating friendships now that will last eternally. Someone commented when they were that they were more involved really with the sojourners than they were in activities back home at the church where they attend. Well, that may say more than we want to go into right now. But I heard someone else commented while we were working out in the hot sun at a Christian children's home that they wouldn't work this hard if they were getting paid for it. And I think those statements kind of indicate how much this organization and the good that it does means to a lot of people. If you want someone to become a part of this organization, or any other really, including the church, it has to first mean something to you. You can't effectively tell someone that they need to be a part of something that you're really not sold on yourself. Some of you knew Don Norman, who was a director in Sojourners. Don and I were deacons together many years ago. And over time, he and I had several conversations about the Sojourners. It was obvious to me that he and Peggy were really sold on the Sojourners, and it meant a lot to them. He couldn't hide it. And when the time was right, we became Sojourners. A friend influenced a friend in a way that a stranger could not possibly have done. Andrew brought his brother to Jesus. And one day, a woman left a well and went into town and convinced her friends that they needed to come and see a very unique individual. Christians should be some of the friendliest people on earth. How can we hope to influence those that we aren't willing first to befriend and convince them that we care about them? I want us to think about some types of people that Christians should be friends to. John said in 1 John 1 and 7, if we walk in the light, we have fellowship one with another. So one of the first types of people that springs to our mind is other Christians. Christians should be the easiest type of any to befriend. These are the people that we're planning to spend an eternity in heaven with. If we can't stand them now, what will an eternity with them be like? We aren't going to find ourselves in heaven a completely different personality than we are now. We are telling God now, by the way we conduct ourselves, how we're going to conduct ourselves in heaven. And so, every day, we are indicating to God how we're going to behave in heaven. Think about this. Is it different for you being a friend to another Christian than it is being a friend to a non-Christian? In other words, do you find it more difficult to have really close friends who are in the world? And if your answer is that there's no difference, maybe you need to have some self-evaluation. We should find a lot of difference between the two. Don't non-Christians have different habits? Don't they use different language usually? Don't they go to different places? Don't they have different standards than we do as Christians? It's too bad, isn't it, that all of our friends can't be our friends in all phases of our life. And that's what's different about being a friend to other Christians. It's a unique relationship. It should be a relationship such that we can settle legal matters without going to court and having the court assist us in that matter. It should be such a close relationship that it doesn't matter what our financial status is, what our race is, what our gender is, what our financial situation is. Now for a little tougher one. We should be a friend to those who mistreat us or that we might classify as being our enemies. That easy to do? A lesson that we must learn as Christians is one of forgiveness. It's a lesson I believe that we all struggle with at times. But Jesus said that if we don't learn the lesson of forgiveness, we shouldn't expect to see heaven. And he told a story which illustrates that lesson very plainly and very clearly. Heaven will be full of people who forgave others. Romans 12 tells us that we should let God handle revenge. We don't need to be holding grudges. We should want what's best, even for those who are difficult to get along with. We don't want to create any barrier which would stand in the way of us leading that other person to Christ should the opportunity present itself. And then we should also be friends to those who are outside those that are saved. Outreach methods come and go, as we've seen in some of the previous presentations. What has worked in the past may not work today. But one thing that has always worked and will always continue to work is making friends out of people and showing that we care about them and then trying to lead them to Christ. There has to be something attractive for people to see that they want to be a part of Christian fellowship. The world is already attractive to them. And if they can't see that Christians have something to offer that the world doesn't offer, they're not going to want to be a part of it. That's a big reason why we have some small groups. Some small groups present an atmosphere, a venue that's not intimidating to some who might never otherwise darken a church door. Have you ever been a part of a visitation program and you really didn't want to go out and invite people to the congregation where you attended? You weren't really comfortable there yourself. What kind of image does your congregation portray to the community? Is your congregation guest friendly? John said in John 17 that Jesus prayed that the world, that his disciples might be one. Do you remember why Jesus made that statement? Why did Jesus pray for unity when he was in the shadow of a cross praying in the Garden of Gethsemane? The reason that he gave was that the world might be one. I'm an elder at the Keller Church and I'm part-time staff, so I'm in the office a good bit. Recently, we had a lady that just called out of the blue. We didn't know who she was. And she offered some furniture for us. Well, I went over and looked at it, and it was much better than the furniture that I was using in the elder's office. The drawers worked and everything. And so I took the furniture. But then I asked this lady, why did she choose us? And she said, well, I passed by that way quite a bit. And I just thought this might be a good place for my furniture. And I said, well, we would like to have you attend the Church of Christ here. I invited her to come visit us. Well, she hesitated for a moment, and then she said, I really don't care for the Church of Christ. Well, I said, why? Well, I don't really care for churches that believe in laying on of hands and speaking in tongues. Well, of course, I tried to straighten her out on that, and finally she decided, well, she must have been talking about the Church of God. And I said, well, that's possible. They're part of the holiness group, and they do things like that. I asked her if she was going anywhere. She said, no, I don't go anywhere. I said, we tried another church, but they do some things that I didn't care for either. People, a denominational world that can't agree on what it believes is one of the greatest tools that Satan has. Amen. But also, a church that's full of bickering members is not attractive to the world and not the unity that Christ prayed for. We must be of one mind to be attractive to the world. Christians who can't agree among themselves have lost sight of the very mission of the church. What does the congregation that you attend look like to those that visit? What do they talk about when they leave and get in the car? One of the qualifications that's stated for an elder is he needs to have a good reputation in the community. Well, I've often wondered why every Christian shouldn't have a good reputation in the community. I'm sure that some of you probably have been involved in World Bible School, either by snail mail or by internet. And of course, we've got a presentation here by Bob on another method to reach out to the world. This is another way that we can make friends around the world. If we are talking to someone even on the internet or by snail mail, and there's a vast difference between the two types of students, I might say. Those that are on the internet usually have an entirely different socioeconomic status than those that are doing snail mail. But this is another way that we can make friends. I have even taught members of the church by World Bible School that were out of duty. They needed some help to encourage them to come back to the Lord. I made friends with one over the internet who was a baker. He knew how to cook. And we became such friends, he was sending me recipes. I had a young man in Africa who made a crude drawing in crayon for me. And he pasted that onto a broken piece of glass and sent it to me. Do you think I threw that away? It's still gathering dust in my office. If you want to be involved in a work that almost anyone can do World Bible School. If you need some information about it, go to their teacher's website and get that information. Now I want to make some comments about our very best friend. The Apostle John wrote in 1 John 1 and 3, and truly our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. Statements that have always amazed me are the very first words of the Bible. Such power is contained in those words as to stagger man's comprehension. A few words, and this earth, with all of its wonders, were created, came into being, out of nothing. Now that defies the laws of physics that I learned in school, that matter cannot be created or destroyed. And yet now we have the earth with deep oceans of water, tall forest of trees. We have the earth with rolling prairies as far as the eye can see, and arid deserts, all created out of nothing. And then living creatures begin to stir, including one that was made in the very image of the Creator. A few more words, in this solar system, as part of a vast galaxy, was created out of nothing. And then other galaxies, stars, all over the place were created out of nothing. We just can't grasp all of that with our finite minds on this tiny speck in this vast universe. John tells us that something that he calls the Word was involved in that. As he said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were created by him, and without him was not anything created that was made. And then maybe to alleviate any doubt as to who he's talking about, a few verses later he says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. In all of this vast creation, the earth was designated as something special. The Creator loved this part of his creation, and something caused him to have patience with it beyond all reason. Even when man turned against him, he continued to love it, be patient with it, and nurture it. And at one point he came down here and allowed himself to be abused, even to the point of being killed. The created did that to the Creator. And even in the face of such abuse and such total disregard for the great love and sacrifice, Jesus prayed to God, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. An old song that we sung a few days ago here was what a friend we have in Jesus. Sometimes I think we take our best friend too lightly. After Jesus was delivered from the tomb, he set about to show the world once and for all that he was the divine Son of God. One of his disciples was convinced only after he placed his fingers in the scars of his body. And then Thomas said, my Lord and my God. He was finally getting the message. And then Jesus made a statement to Thomas. He said, blessed are you because you believe and you have seen. But blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. The Hebrews writer said that faith is the evidence of things not seen. And then a few verses later he said, without such faith, it's impossible to please God. Jesus cared about whether Thomas believed that he was the Son of God. And these last statements in Hebrews shows that he also cares whether we believe. So the question is, does our faith in Jesus matter as much to us as it does to him? Does it matter as much whether we believe and what we believe? It mattered so much to him that he came down to this earth over 2,000 years ago, and he tried to teach us who he was by using different methods. The message that Jesus was trying to get across is such a powerful message that it can work wonders in the lives of men and women today, 2,000 years later. We're prone to think, I believe, that after Jesus left this earth, his job was finished. After all, he had said, it's finished. John said in 1 John 1 and 2, 1 John 2, little children, these things write I unto you that you sin not. But if you sin, you have an advocate with the Father, the man, Jesus Christ. So Jesus is still loving us. He's still working for us. He's not taking it easy up in heaven. For over 2,000 years, every hour of every day, and every day of every year, he's been listening to millions and millions of requests from us and taking those requests to the Father. Now, I must confess, I don't understand how that's possible. It must have something to do with divinity. He's doing that because he loves us. Task is mind-numbing, difficult to understand, but he's doing it for us. And all he asks of us is that we love him back. He said, if you love me, you'll do what I ask you to do. So I can get you home safely. And I want you to be with me forever. He put it this way. And this is taken from John again. Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. For in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. For I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Jesus is doing all of that for us. Now it's up to us.